Okay, it is about 8:30, 8:36. Welcome to um, Realities in Criminal Justice. My name is Richard Wright. Most of you in this class know me from when you were going through your associates, and it's really good to see many of my former students that I've had in Introduction to Corrections, Introduction to Criminal Law. Um, let's see what other classes, drugs and crime. And then some of you I've had in the J280, Contemporary Issues in Criminal Justice. That was one of the uh, few 11-week courses that's still left. I was scheduled to teach that this summer, but I'm on a special assignment. There's a couple other students I know that are in my class here that I've had in other classes I've taught. And so it's always good to see or hear and recognize familiar faces. And so most of you'll know how I roll, but I'm going to be reminding you guys of how I operate, as you'll learn if you listen to me very carefully and if you really follow the rubrics. And if you have questions about the rubrics, then reach out to me. Then you'll learn too that I reach out pretty fast to you guys. And I'm one of the few professors that you guys will have that operate the way that I do. So, okay. So let's go ahead and share my screen. Okay, there we go. Share content. And here we go. Okay. One of the things they did, they made some changes in the course setup for the WebEx. Hopefully it's for the better. So, well, anyway, as you can see, I'm going to be a little redundant to most of you here that you'll see my instructor information, my name. You see that phone number, 630-660-8480. You can lock it into your phone because of the fact that what I'm about to say next is you can feel free to call me, text me, or email me any hour of the day except the 25th hour of the day. And it means what it says for those of you who are newcomers. Um, Take me up on it and you'll see there are students who reach out to me late at night and they find out that I'm up and available. It says, Professor Wright, do you ever sleep? I do sleep. And my phone is though always near me. It's almost like I'm on call like a doctor, but I feel like my students reach out to me that they really need me. Now, let me caution you that when you call me, or rather when you text me especially, be sure to include your name. Make sure you include the course that you're asking about, and then get into the topic of what you want to know. And oftentimes I will, rather than text you back, because I like talking rather than texting, I'm I'm 70 years old. And so you'll find out about me. You probably did if you've taken a look at the forum under the discussions for the classroom, where you got to learn a little bit about me. And that is this one right here. Let's see, I just want to go to discussions and show you what I'm talking about. Click, click. Well, I want it open. It should be opening. I don't know why it's not opening. Oh, something happened. Okay, let's go back. Okay, let me go back in. Something happened. I don't know what happened. Okay, there we go. Okay, now, and I was trying to get to discussions, and I was trying to get to student lounge. Yeah, so those of you who have seen, oh, see, here's some names here. Um, Zachary Dawson, former student. Melissa, Melissa is the one that you will discover is um, the person that works with the um, tutor program. And then there's some other names I recognize in here as well. Then I recognize that last name at the bottom. That's me. So if you saw this, come on, come up. I don't know what's wrong with this system today. There we go. If you saw this, you saw my welcome post and it told you about myself. And then you see my family. It's my wife there, and that's my son Julian, who's uh, 20. She's the 21. This one, she's a student at Rasmussen in medical. She's heading to be a nurse. Then there's this young man, Richard Jr. He's 25, and these are both 6'2" guys. And then there's my baby girl, Jillian, she's taller than that now. So anyway, and then you'll see down here information about myself. You'll see me about my accomplishment of law school. And this is in here to encourage you, not necessarily, you don't have to become a lawyer, but to encourage you to recognize what you can achieve if you have stick to it. And you'll hear me talk about my little story in a little bit. I'm going to try to give a shorter version of it today. And then this is a little mnemonic that I made up years ago in '84, had it copywritten, and it actually is based on the word lawyers. But these are all elements of education that will help you be successful. And I did these things and turned these into a way of life, um, and it has made me successful, and I invite you to do the same. And then some of you I see have responded. I will be responding back to you guys a little later on. So I wanted to share that with you there. All right, let's get back to the course homepage. Okay. All right. So anyway, on this page, you can also email me as well. You'll see my email on that same page I just showed you a few minutes ago. And you'll also discover not just my Rasmussen email, but my personal email. There are times when students want to reach out to me that way as well. But either way, I get it pretty fast because I have this thing right here, this cell phone, which keeps me apprised of everything that's going on in life, from bills I got to pay and to everything else. But I receive my emails from my from my faculty email very quickly as well. And I like to respond very quickly. So you won't again find me holding you up. No student telling the truth will ever say that they can't reach me. That's on them. And then the other thing I want to say is that when you do text me, as I already said earlier, I will possibly call you and talk to you because I like to talk to my students. You guys are all over the country, and with this pandemic going on, there are some things that we're kind of flexible on, particularly with some of the assignments that you'll have in front of you, that we'll be able to work out all kinds of things to help you out there. Now, rubrics, as you see, are highlighted. I already said this. I can't say this enough. If you pay attention to the rubrics, I promise you that you will end up doing very well in this class. Everybody in my classes that I teach know how serious I am about rubrics. And why am I like that? Because the rubrics give you an idea about what the expectations are in terms of getting assignments completed. APA, I shouldn't even be telling you about that anymore. We actually are operating on APA 6th edition, uh, and that winter, in the winter, I don't think in the fall, but I think in the winter, that they're going to be moving towards 7. Some of you will recognize it is fall. Okay, good. That's why it's good to have peer leaders in here. But I will tell you this, that we've already been instructed that when students start in the fall to use it, to be real flexible with it. And we want to make sure that you as students will understand the importance of APA. It is essential because it deals with credibility. And you'll see me in a few minutes do an academic integrity video, which you guys should be familiar with. Uh, and um, and so we're going to, APA is very, very, very important, very important. Critical thinking, I don't have to talk about that either with you guys, because you should understand at this point in the juncture of critical thinking and what it's all about. But it is one of our transferable skills that I'll touch on very briefly. Again, I'll touch briefly in this course because you have already heard this before. Those of you who are new to the school should probably have already heard about critical thinking in other instances as well. And it's very, very, very important. All right. So this is some additional information. Notice this is not in the rubrics, but I pay attention to it. And I put in caps. So I've been told by some people that whenever I send them something in all caps, they think I'm yelling. I says, I'm not yelling. I'm 70 years old. That's not yelling for me. That's pay attention. It's really something very important and urgent because of the fact that I want you to see it. I try not to yell at anybody. Sometimes I yell at my kids, but anyway, I try not to too much. So anyway, all, how does I say all? Written assignments should be in APA format. That means citations in the body of the paper and references at the end. Now, there are some other things that go with it, but I focus on those as my core things, dealing with things like the header and dealing with formatting and things like that is very important. Does anybody know the font that's supposed to be used in APA? I know peer leader does. Okay, and what size? That's right. That's right. That's right. 12. So we got that all together. So let's make sure that we do that. Please do it in 12. These old eyes need as big as possible. I could use it in 24, but no, I'm just kidding. But 12. So make sure that you do that. Now, to be honest with you, I look very quickly at your font and make sure, thank you, Junior, that I look at it very carefully. But the key thing that I'm going to be looking for is you're giving credit to the sources. And the way you do that is through citations in the body and references in the end. To the extent that you cite court cases, there's appropriate ways to cite court cases as well. So you can get help from that, from our tutoring, and also I think the peer leaders are also trained in that as well. And so anyway, I'm going to tell you that all the information here is in bold is very, very, very important. Also reminding you that you will lose 1 point for not providing a cover sheet. Okay, and in this particular course, you won't see the other comment that I usually make if you just use the textbook. You are aware There is no textbook in this course, right? Are you guys aware of that? Okay, excellent. Because see, let me explain to you this course. This is more like a survey, and this is a course that actually I'm looking for them to do some changing because they're still using the good old O.J. Simpson case, which I know a whole lot about. You, some of you guys who've had me before heard me talk about it. I had some close um, relationship with the lead attorney Johnny Cochran, who passed away some years ago. And I know some things about the O.J. Simpson case that I usually will talk about, and I've covered in other classes as well. So we'll hopefully deal with that issue as well. So anyway, but you will lose a point for not providing a cover sheet. That's part of the whole process of making sure that you have a APA and that you actually utilize the sources of things like NoodleBib. Okay, here this is some information that you can go to these links and you can find out about answers, and I'll just click on it for you. Yes, and it tells you what peer people do, right? Peer leader. And it helps students to basically what it is these are individuals who are able to help you deal with the whole process of being a student, to help you. And I don't hesitate to reach out to a peer mentor, because it says in these little bullet points, and it tells that from A to Z here has been exactly where you are now. In other words, they've been through the new stuff. We call them the vets. They able to share the expectations and what to expect in the head, and then provide tips that save you time and effort to help you. They've been there, done that. Put it like that, and they'll speak directly to the concerns of the unknown and things like that. And then, how do you meet a peer to mentor? Well, actually, you got one right here in class, but you click here for the instructions, and then it gives you the key thing is that the peer mentor and actually can deal with this little guide to the best resource that you need to help you out. I will say this right now, that it is important that you consider tutoring as not just when you have a problem, because our peer mentor and the tutors are all extremely well trained. They are well vetted. They have good leadership. Okay, like Bethany Marston. You know Bethany, don't you? You know Bethany? I know. That's why I was gonna wait for you to tell me. Yes, she's the boss. And you probably also know John. Do you know John Malatic? Dean John Malatic as well? Yes, you're going to hear from him in just a few minutes. And then also in this particular program, we have each of the schools of, we have Dennis Johnson, the librarian. Are you familiar with Dennis as well? Yes, great. See, so wow, this is exciting, guys, to have a peer mentor in our class. I am just excited to hear that. That really, I got to tell Bethany. I says, I got one of your peer mentors as a student. Okay. So anyway, these are things that you can go and take a look at. This is just something to help you. You know what our goal is at this school is to make sure that you guys have student success. And then, there's links that I post on my course homepage to help you with research and things of that nature. Again, your peer mentor as well as tutors are able to help you. And then this is a little bit about tutoring assistance. Okay. And then you can click on this on your own. These are some articles that I have posted time and time in my classes to help you. And if you open up the PDFs, it will provide you with information about how to go beyond the textbook, which you don't have a problem here in this particular course, but it still helps you with research and things of that nature. Analytical tips for criminal justice students. This helps you actually with your critical thinking. Information literacy for criminal justice students. And that's to make sure that you use credible resources. Before, I'm just going to ask a question of this whole class, and I don't want the peer leader to answer it. What is one of the um, resources that you never used in this course? Okay, that's it. Wikipedia. Wikipedia. Okay, Sarah, she wasn't in the classes before, but yeah, Wikipedia. And I speak about it constantly because of the fact that there are students who try to use it. Now, here's the deal with Wikipedia. It does have some good information, however, it is not credible. And does anybody know why it's not credible? Why we don't trust it? Anybody know? It's not a scholarly source. Anyone can edit it. There you go. Anyone can edit it. And that's true. That is the exact reason. It's not necessarily in the public domain, but it's because anyone can edit it. And it's in the word base. Just like you could, if you submit a Word document to me, which you will, all your written assignments, by the way, will be in Word document, then you want to make sure. Now, I'm not talking about your discussion posts. I'm talking, and if you did those, that's fine too. But I'm talking about your written assignments outside of your discussion forum. All should be written in Word format. And it says it actually in the assignment, but I cannot tell you how many times students have submitted PDFs. When they do, they get a 0 because I can't edit it. As you may or may not know already, and you probably do, Grammarly. You all are all very familiar with Grammarly and should be familiar with the fact that you have a Grammarly account here at the school that doesn't cost you anything. I'll show you where to find that information in just a few minutes, but most of you in this class already know. And I used it not just for spelling and the grammar itself, but I primarily used it to check on what? Anybody know what I use it to check on? Something we want you to stay away from. Yep, yep, that's it, plagiarizing. And some people think that plagiarizing is not going to happen if you give the sources cited. If your paper has a content of cutting and pasting and not critical thinking, because we want to know what's happening up in this gray matter up here. And so we want to make sure that you understand that it is so important that we don't want you to be robotic. We want you to be individuals who are very creative. All right. So now, so anyway, that goes to information literacy. Referencing, this is when you get into using the proper formatting. You don't have to worry about the annotated bibliography in most of the courses now. Then there's a video for critical thinking. If you need a refresher, you can go back and take a look at that as well. Rubrics, which we will focus on, are located in each weekly assignment and the course project. Discussion posts have its own rubric. We have a generic rubric that we use for this. And then this is a video that I utilized and I still left it in there. I was going to take it out, about an incident that happened in Chicago involving Laquan McDonald. You hear me talking about that. In our day and time, you know, dealing with everything that's happened, most recently dealing with George Floyd. And we're probably going to be revising this to update it to include some of the instances that have been taking place where excessive force has been alleged and used. I don't know anybody that I know that did not see the video of what happened with George Floyd. If anybody don't know who George Floyd is now, then I don't know where they've been in the last month. But that video itself has caused law enforcement to re-examine many things and to re-examine one of the things that they started to do away with the case of I can't think of his first name, but his last name was Gray. I know his name off the top of my head. I just can't think of it. And this was thank you, Freddie Gray, who was choked, and and then the whole thing is a chokehold thing being done away with in the academies across the country. And then there's more sensitivity training that law enforcement is learning. So anyway, those are some of the issues that we'll be discussing during the next weeks to come. Okay. Today is just a survey of what I expect. I won't get into specifics. So here's how it works. Starting with today, our first lecture, which is an open house. And that's because I'm talking about the things I'm talking about today at the beginning. I will not be talking about them during weeks 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And that's why the lectures will generally last an hour. Then today's goes a little longer. You must attend the lecture or listen to the recording. Now, there's a lag in the recording because of the fact that there are more people now that are using WebEx than before the way it's being used. So our lecture tonight, for example, the recording will be made available to you tomorrow. But during the course of every recording, I will give a key phrase or word. And if you pay close attention to what I'm talking about in the topic for that week, generally you will be able to give it. And then what I usually do at the end of a week's lecture or during near the end, ask anybody have any ideas for what I already have chosen to be the key word or key phrase. And my students do pretty well with it. So anyway, you'll get your points. Now, I already will tell you this, is that, and this is kind of jumping ahead, is that your key phrase or word is due when? Uh-huh. Uh-uh. Sunday. Sunday. It's Sunday. She was right. 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. As you're going to hear me talk about, your written assignments are generally due, with the exception of your discussion posts, which we'll talk about that in a little bit. So anyway, this is one of your written assignments, your live lecture, and you'll get points for it, getting it on time, and then giving me the correct thing there. Now, under here where it says recordings, this will be one of the places. In addition, I email the recordings to you. And what I do is different from most of the professors that you probably have had, is that I take those recordings and I convert those recordings to YouTube, which a lot of my students love, because you can actually have access to it even after the course is over if you save the links yourself, because the only way that you can get it is if I give you the link. The public can't get it, but unless you get into my homepage. But anyway, the point of the matter is that the lecture is converted out of WebEx because you'll see periodically, if you've been here a while, that WebEx has problems. Very rarely do we see problems with YouTube, and that people have actually, I can actually sit down at my in my television, have a smart TV, and I sit in front of that TV, and I can put YouTube on there because of the fact I have a Roku. I have about 4 Roku TVs in the house that allow me to access um, applications like YouTube, and I can actually look at the lectures that way as well. And students have done the same thing as well. So anyway, the links each week will be under where it says recordings. Right now, there's nothing because this is the first one today. All right. So now let's go over here. Announcements. You will have announcements. Pay close attention to announcements. My announcements are designed to give you an idea of when deadlines are, gives you a reminder of what the assignments are for that particular week, and it also gives you a reminder when the lectures are taking place. It also tells you one other thing that's very, 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 very important, and that's at the end. It talks about adversity is the springboard to success. You'll learn about what that means. Quite a few of you in this class already know that already. I'm blessed and happy to learn that there are many of my students who have used this phrase, and I've had other professors to come back to me and say, hey, hey, Wright, thanks for the encouragement to the students. I said, oh, that's what I do. And everybody in this classroom should know you will never hear me talk negatively to you. If I give you criticism, it's constructive criticism because I want you to be the best. Okay. So the academic integrity announcement is what I want to go on right now. And I want to share this video. I'm going to copy the link. And by the way, I'm going to, let's see, copy it. Okay. And then I'm going to open it up. And then we're going to listen to this. So I'm going to paste in. Okay. I usually like to do paste and go. I should have done that. Let me move this out the way. Okay. Let's see if I can get it that way. Okay, there we go. It's going to come up. Okay, now this is all about academic integrity, and I'm getting ready to take my headset off so that you can hear it. It also will have closed captioning in it. It's only about. Get ready for it.
Okay. All right.
Just for those you who don't know, our peer leader knows, that was Dean John Mladic. He's an awesome guy. In fact, he was the dean at the Romeoville campus um, for a while I was there. He was the second dean that came in while I was working there. I started working there in 2011. And then he went to Rockford, which is where he operates out of right now at the Rockford campus. But he works with Bethany Marston, he works with Dennis Johnson, and all of our wonderful uh, and exciting um, student tutors and peer mentors that we're very blessed to have. And I tell you, take advantage of them. They're really, really good. Now, if you notice, one of the things I had talked about earlier about APA importance, because it gets to the academic integrity issue, giving credit. Now, when you use Grammarly, the academic integrity issue that comes about here is that with plagiarism is while you did cite your sources, then you still need to have your paper to be you. I want to see you in the paper. I want to see your thoughts, your ideas. I want to see your positions. And student tutors and peer mentors and leaders can help you with that along the way because they totally get it. And like I said again, these guys are, you have to have a certain grade point average to be able to be one of those, and they're vetted and very well trained in what they do. So anyway, academic integrity is important. You're going to find with me that integrity is one of our serious things that we need to work on. And then dealing with the writing process, once again, you can take this through the process. Noted, there you go again. You see the tutors are in here. And then it helps you um, that to recognize what I said earlier. At any point in this writing process, you get tutors to help you and visit tutor match as well. All right. All of this is on the course page. And then APA assistance, again, that if you click on this, it will lead you to the APA guide. And you'll see the little toolkit, the APA Quick Start toolkit that helps you in terms of dealing with it. And notice it's still in the 6th edition. So, but it's moving. It says it right here, APA 7th edition sample papers, and also they're in here already. However, this summer, don't worry about it. I won't, uh, you won't lose points if you use 6. But in the fall, as we've already been told, then that's when we're going to run into the problem. And then even then, us professors will still be real flexible with you guys and send you to a tutor to be able to help you with this. And you have all this information here to help you as well. Now, this is not to substitute for a tutor. What it does is it gives you a working knowledge so that you will be able to communicate with your tutor uh, or a peer mentor when you're working together with them. APA checklist, Noodle tools, um, deal with the citation generator so you can get the appropriate um, citations involved. And there are videos that are involved here. And there are all kinds of sources. One of the things about Rasmussen that's different from other schools that I know of is that we don't want our students to not be successful because of these things that are critical to causing you to uh, enhance knowledge, not just copying and pasting. Researching is so ever important in this world today. Almost everything involves research. And um, constantly things are changing, as you learn here from 6 to 7 with the APA. And so this toolkit is very valuable. Along the left side, it talks about the 7th edition, setting up your paper, citations, references, and preventing plagiarism and things like that. So it's right here. I have it right here on it. It's in the resources, but I have it right here in the class. Okay. Now, before I get to my announcements, let me show you something here. Let's go over here for a minute. There's a resource tab, which you see my mouse on. It's at the top right. And if you click on that, you'll see number one in that corner, that video that I just shared with you, where you can always find it. And then there's library resources. See, let me say to you, if you use resources from the library and learning center primarily, and you get into the habit of doing that, you will satisfy the information literacy requirements, because all of those things have been vetted completely and are um, purchased by the school, or they acquire a license to help you. Then you deal with APA, there we go again. Paralegal, we won't be dealing with that unless you're in the paralegal program. Grammarly, that's what I was talking about earlier. If you clicked on that, it would tell you about using Grammarly. And making sure that when you use Grammarly, your own Grammarly, run your papers through before you send them to me. Because there'll be students, oh, I didn't know that. You don't have to run your discussion posts. Some people do require it. I'm not going to do that to you. That's for your general written assignments and projects. And then the Noodle guide and so forth, and then the writing guide. And this is very important. You can make an appointment with the librarian and those kinds of things. There we go again. Staff member here. Here's our librarian, and that's Dennis. He can assist you with navigating the criminal justice and paralegal databases. And if you need assistance with APA, again, you see it on and on. Tutoring, so important. It is not a bad word. It is not a word for students who are in trouble. It is important to utilize that and so forth. And you find all kinds of things like the chat hours. You can actually chat to get information there and all those different things that will help you. So now I want to take a few minutes and talk about the transferable skills that we have here. Now, let me move this out the way. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Let me move. There we go. Put it down there for now. All right. So what are our transferable skills? Very simply put, transferable skills are 6 things that we have identified at this school that we know that lead to student success. Things that can help you in terms of being successful in school. And the reason why we say transferable is because you're not going to be in school forever. You're going to, well, you are going to be in school, but the reason I call it is I'm steadily learning. I'm not taking any classes right now. I have just recently completed some classes myself on the law and COVID-19. So I was in classes, but my point being is that when you work on your job, you're going to end up needing to have these skills. And employers have told us through our advisory boards and other individuals that we want students to be ready at each of these skills to be able to apply them when they come to work for any organization or agency. And very important. So there are 3 transferable skills. The first 3 that I talk about are for the ability to be able to um, prepare yourself as an individual. In other words, these are internal things that you learn to do. And I've talked about them, but critical thinking is the first one. And I am a natural critical thinker because I went to law school and I learned what we call the Socratic method. And it's a method that taught me how to research, how to write, how to think out of the box, how to think on my feet. I was a trial lawyer, and trust me, I had judges to ask me questions, and I had to be ready to answer them. Or there are things that happened in the courtroom where I need to make an objection in the courtroom. And some of the times the judges would ask, what's the basis of your objection? You had to be ready to answer those. So what critical thinking does, and I'll just read this, as improves your thinking, problem solving, and creativity. And you apply standards of making sure that it's clear in terms of your communication, precise, logic, and you thought about it. Some reflection. In other words, you didn't just shoot off the top of your head, but it was actually well thought out. If you ever saw the movie My Cousin Vinny, one of my favorite movies, that the judge said to Vincent Gambino, who was the attorney in the movie, that he actually said these words. He says, Mr. Gambino, that was a well thought out and logical, and he said something to that effect, objection. However, it's overruled. But the point of the matter is that it connected with the judge or whoever that you're trying to connect with. And critical thinking is demonstrated in your written and oral communication. Okay. Digital fluency, guys, didn't exist when I came out of college. Didn't exist when I came out of law school in 1978. But now it is a way of life. Books are digital, as you know, from articles are digital. You almost all of you have one of these things, a cell phone. And on my phone, I have what they call apps for short, which is short for application. And in these apps, it has everything from, believe it or not, I can actually find myself in a situation where I can pull up my textbook, if there's a textbook, or I can pull up an article and I can look at it. I can download it and save it as a PDF document. I can load Word documents. I can write things. And also, believe it or not, I can actually log into my WebEx. I have been on the road, and we've had times when I've had WebEx meetings, and I'm able to listen to them in my car or either be away. But because I have an app on my phone that allows me to be able to do that. The point of the matter is that digital fluency is very important. You have to learn how to navigate your learning system, which is Blackboard here, be able to utilize WebEx and how to be able to access your recordings in most instances, even with the click of a link with YouTube. All of you guys are familiar with using YouTube. And so everything is digital. And so when you get into any area of criminal justice, you're going to use digital tools, Excel spreadsheets. You're going to use Word documents. You're going to use PDF. You're going to learn how to use Google in a professional manner, recognizing that there's a lot of trash out there, but you're going to have to learn how to utilize that. I still use Google because the fact that it gives me quick answers to things to refresh my memory, and then if I want to do further research, then I can go to appropriate places and find some good stuff. And so it's important for you to understand that we want you to be effective in dealing with digital fluency. Information literacy, being able to find materials that are credible resources. You'll hear that term quite a bit. So that's internally. Now we communicate among others, starting with communication, written and oral communication, being able to share, being able to read, and being able to speak. And also consider nonverbal language as well, being able to learn. You're going to find yourself communicating with people in various languages. I am not fluent in Spanish, but I can speak what they call poquito in Espanol. And oftentimes I can communicate with people utilizing that language. Most time it's around food, like albondigas, if anybody ever knows what I'm talking about. But anyway, a lot of people know tacos and burritos, but they don't know albondigas. But anyway, that's a whole nother discussion. I shouldn't even be talking about that now because I haven't had dinner. I'll be having dinner when I'm through. But communication is important in criminal justice. Diversity and teamwork. You're going to deal with people from various backgrounds, cultures, people who are different from you. And you have to operate in a fashion um, uh, that we refer to as empathy. You have to be able to empathize with individuals. And I do that with my students. I do that with people, period. But I especially do that with my students. I go to a high level to let my students realize and know that you're not just a person who comes to me, I'm your professor and you're the student. I said, nope, we're a team. I'm the coach and you're one of the players. And I'm going to teach you what skills you need to do to be able to one day become coach if you choose to, but to be a leader in society. And that's what I do. So communication is ever important. Diversity and teamwork, empathy, working with individuals, as it says, from different backgrounds and perspectives. I may not agree with everything that somebody says, but guess what? I will work with you to try to help me understand it. And that, speaking of that, when we do discussion posts, one of the things I always tell my students, don't try to write the stuff that you want me to see, because you're not going to gain points. You can, there are students who have disagreed and gone different directions. Well, all I ask is that you be courteous and respectful in terms of doing that as well. So diversity and teamwork, ethics and professional responsibility. Lord knows that the criminal justice field, especially in law enforcement, we need to step up to the plate in an ethical fashion. You'll hear me say this over and over, that I operate from 3 tiers: ethical, professional, and educated criminal justice students. And that's how I roll. And that's the way I live my life. And I expect my students to do the same things. So therefore, if you tell me things like, for example, um, this happened or that happened, then you're not telling me a lie, to have me to work with you. And I'll talk about that a little bit when we get into the late assignment policy in just a little bit here. So professional responsibility, almost every area of criminal justice, law enforcement, you become an attorney, prosecutor, or defense attorney. You work in forensics or any area, parole, probation, corrections, all of those things. You're going to have some professional codes that you're responsible. So if you want to learn more about the transferable skills, you can click on this as well. But they're very, very, how should I say, much focused on preparing you for the real world. Okay, so now let's go back here, and now let's go back to the course homepage. Let me back up. Here we go. Okay, I'll take questions if you have any a little later, but at this point, I'm just giving you information again. A lot of times during my lectures, I will stop and ask, are there any questions? This, I want to make sure that you pay attention to the welcome announcement, and then also recognize and understand something about the welcome announcement. These things that are highlighted are very, very important to help you go in the right direction. Syllabus, course mail, check your course mail frequently, okay? Syllabus, we're going to talk about that in a minute. And then your course calendar. There's a section called General Course Questions in there that you will find, and that's under discussions actually, where anyone can post a question. Don't put your private information in there. This is an opportunity to have uh, some help from a student, and we're talking about the proper kind of help. And anyone can answer the question, not just me as the instructor or professor, but any one of you can answer this. Resources tab we were already familiar with. Your report tab gives you access to your grade book. I never use that. Okay, and then here's some other information down here, and then there's a reminder about the lectures that take place every Tuesday for the next 6 weeks. Okay, and then technical issues. Let me say, personal support, PSC. You can call them any hour of the day, like me. They're 24/7. Oops, I gave it away what the 25th hour means. Well, anyway, that's a whole nother thing. And so you could call them at this number. Now you can say, oh, professor, oh man, I forgot where it's in the announcement somewhere. Well, guess where else it is? I'm going to show you. Move that to the top. There it is at the bottom of every page that you run across. It's right there. So you can call them and they will make a ticket. They will help you get done what needs to get done. Now, each week, each week there will be at least one, maybe more, our regular announcements. And this is the format that I use because it's worked pretty well with my students. And it tells you in yellow about the topics themselves. And then it explains to you what is expected for that week. And then it talks about, in this week, read print media and the crime, values and medias, and relationship between criminal investigations and the media. I'll be talking about some of those topics, not today, because again, this is an open house. So week one, I kind of like get you headed toward what needs to be done by getting the expectations that you understand for this very first week. So the discussion post, police pursuit policies, is this week's. Now, you're going to have an initial post that's going to be due tonight at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then your reply post Saturday at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. That's what Junior was probably thinking of when he said Saturday, because the only assignments that are due on Saturdays are the reply posts. And so you be aware that your initial post should be thought out, should be detailed. I don't want short answers to your question to what the topic is. I want to make sure that you understand that you're contributing to communication between your professor and well as your classmates. This is the opportunity where students have a chance to collaborate and come together and work as a team to comment on various topics. So you're required to submit at least one initial post. And by the way, I do not require citations or references. However, I appreciate them because of the fact that it demonstrates to me where you got the information from. And it's a good habit to have, that is, but I don't take away points. Most of the time you lose points with this discussion assignment is if your discussion assignment is real short, there's no content in it, there's no critical thinking involved in there, and then also that it may be late. For each day that is late, you'll lose a point. All right. And I'll say this up front, discussion posts are due the week of the discussion. So what does that mean, Professor? So can anybody tell me, based on what I've said so far, when the discussion when the discussion forum ends? That's right. It's Saturday. It's Saturday at 11:59 p.m. Central. Remember, Central. I know some of you guys are in Eastern time. I have a few that are on the east west end of the country, down in Kansas and other areas. But where I am, Central is the time. CST. That's what it stands for. All right. So in other words, your initial post is due Tuesday, and then your reply post. Now, let me tell you something that I do. If you submit your initial post Saturday, it'll be late. You'll lose points. If you submit your initial post and reply post on Saturday, your initial post will be late, but your reply post will be on time. Okay? Anytime after that, it's going to be late. Now, let me just tell you this, and I say this all the time. If you get it at 12:01 or you hit it at 12, now this only applies to the weeks before the course ends. After the course ends, I can't change the clock any like that. But I am very liberal when it comes to giving you time if your discussion post is, like, for example, submitted 12:01, and then I says, oh, okay, I won't deduct points in that. Don't make it a habit, but just be aware that I'm giving you that in terms of it. But the important part about discussions, so that you can get it in your mind, why are we doing this way? Imagine if you're in the classroom and physically, and we're talking about a topic, and then you come in later, and we've already moved on uh, to another topic. Someone said something in the chat, and I want to get that. Oh, okay, Saturday. Okay, that's what I saw. So we are on something else. And so we're done with that topic. Now, what I'm going to tell you though is if you submit a reply post on Sunday, I will accept it, but I will deduct a point. Not an initial post and a reply post, but just a reply post. And that's actually, I give you, if you know anything about golf, that's a mulligan. And so anyway, I give you a chance to be able to have a little space. Now, one of the things I will tell you again is that I'm not going to have any additional assignments that I'm going to give you, because I want you to do the assignments that we have here. And we're going to talk about late assignment policy in just a little bit. But I wanted to make sure that you understand how discussion posts operate and how you can lose points and gain points. I do encourage you though to reply to more than one post. That actually makes the discussion forum more interesting between you, myself, and the student, your classmates, okay? And people oftentimes connect that way as well, okay? Next, we have a written assignment. So this week it's Casey Anthony and the media. Everybody should know about Casey Anthony. If not, you'll be able to research it and you'll find all about Casey Anthony and dealing with the media did there. And so this assignment is due Sunday at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then we're going to talk about that in terms of the rubric in just a minute. I'm also going to discuss the course project today as what you're going to have to do for the course project. And we're going to navigate through this a little different than we've done in the past because of COVID-19. But most last semester, we had a little differently because there were a lot of, most of the country now, you're able to reach somebody now and communicate with people through either Zoom or through other kinds of means other than physically going to the facilities, even by telephone or um, even using WebEx. Some of you can use WebEx as well. So anyway, the point of the matter is we'll talk about that. And then this is a reminder about the lecture. And then this is to remind that I want you to start strong and finish strong, and you'll learn about my motto: adversity is a springboard to success. Now, every week, I will share with you the course calendar. And here it comes, which, by the way, there's a tab at the top for you to be able to see it. And while it's generating, okay, it should be popping up any second. Yep. Come on, course calendar. Where are you? It's thinking. Why is it doing that? There it goes. Okay. So you see, for the whole 6 weeks, it's already laid out. You can click on it and it opens up and it tells you things that you need to know. Tells you what your reading assignments are for the week. So, because sometimes people say it's just a little strip. Nope, it's not. It tells you the times, tells you due dates, as you'll also see that in rubrics as well. tells you about your written assignments, and then tells you when these assignments are due every week. Now, let me show you how quickly this goes. Today is the 7th of July. By the time we get to the 16th of August, we will be, let's say a month from now, we'll have just one more week to go and we'll be done because it goes that fast. So your class ends on the 16th of August. That's when all of your assignments are due in. Now, I'll be talking to you a little later about assignments because it's really divided into two halves. And I work with you on understanding that as we get further into, and I won't get into it today talking about it. But anyway, this is here for you, and you can see it anytime uh, you get ready, and it tells you the schedule. So you can say, well, I don't know. Okay, the announcement tells you, the course calendar tells you, and then I go over it in the lectures as well, if you go through that. All right, let's go to the syllabus. We're not going to spend as much time on the syllabus as I usually do because I covered a lot of stuff that I would. This I already covered. Then it tells you information about me. Okay. We talked about the APA style. So your course requirements will be readings, and your course schedule has already been given. Your discussion assignments, you'll see those again. Your written assignments, and then your course project. That's it for the course except the live lecture. Except the live lecture. Okay. And here's your category. Shows you how your points break down, and your goal is to get 100, okay, or 1,280 points. 1,280 points, Professor. Okay, your written assignments and your course project are 1,100 of those points. Okay, see how much of that is. And then your discussions are next, followed by your live classroom lectures, which, by the way, for each week, you get how many points if you get your key phrase or word in on time? Anybody know? Yep, because just do a little simple math. It's 6 weeks. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and that's it. And so that's that. Okay. Now, let me make this announcement. I bet most of you already know what I'm going to say because I say it over and over and over. But I never, ever understand that some people come to me even later and say, Professor, what do I need to do to get a C in your class? And I tell them, I can't help you with that. I cannot help you. I don't help produce C students. I don't produce D students. We're not even going to talk about the last alternative. My job is to produce, and that's just what I'm paid to do. It's what I take pride in, encouraging you to get in the top tier from A to B minus. I mean, I encourage you. And I promise you, I'll make this promise today, that if you go along with me for the whole 6 weeks and follow what I talk about in the lectures and follow the rubrics and the module, you can't help but be up here. All right, and that's where you want to go, because that equates to honor roll and dean's list. Two of my most favorite things at Rasmussen is attending academic award ceremonies, and also the ultimate is the graduation. Okay, so don't ask me about C's or D's. Don't do that to me. I'm not going to answer it for you. Okay, and then these are things that I do, We already talked about the transferable skills. Attendance policy, you can deal with that yourself. And well, before I get to that, I want to just point out to you the academic integrity policy. Take time to read it. I already kind of alluded to it, and it was referred to in John Maladik's video on academic integrity. Look at it and see what's involved here. Okay, dealing with the incomplete grade policy, you will not have me discussing that with you. That's something you discuss with your advisor and so forth. But I'm the one who ultimately they will ask if I'm willing to do it. I like to work with my students. All right, so now let's talk about the last thing on this. The late assignment policy says that you have up to 7 days after a deadline to submit your assignment. Don't get comfortable with that, because each day after the first day, you lose 10%. So let's say your assignments, as I already have shared, are due on Sunday. When your assignments are due on Sunday, if you submit them on Monday, you're gonna, if it's a really good quality, you satisfied the requirements of the rubric, and you've got APA and all those things there included in the paper, then you're gonna probably get a 90 as the highest. And then the next day, an 80. That's by the second day. The third day, it's a 70. So you see what I'm saying? That way before you get to the 7 days, you would have lost up to 40% of your points, and you're in 60. See what 60s do? See what it does? It puts you at a D minus. So that's why I'm telling you. Okay. Now, I want you, we've already talked about the online discussion, so I don't have to talk about that. Now, you understand that. Now, know this, and it says it in here. Instructors may waive the late penalty or time frame in the case of extenuating circumstances as determined by the faculty. That means I'm the one who may have the final word. The dean does not. The president of the school does not. The chairman of the board of directors. I am the one who decide whether or not to waive a late penalty, and I define extenuating circumstances. Most of you in this class know that I'm very liberal when it comes to that, and that I'm very fair when it comes to late submissions. But if you submit a late assignment and then I don't know why you didn't reach out to me, oh, professor, I don't know what the rules are for reaching out to you. Yeah, you do. It's on the course homepage. I already told you that was one of the earliest things I talked about. Again, I'm throwing that in your lap to be able to do that. And let me know. Oh, I didn't want to bother you. Well, guess what? Now you're bothering me because you're messing up my curve. I don't want my students to fail. I always look at my listing of students, and usually in this class, I think I got 30 something students. I don't expect anybody to fail, but most of the time my average of failure rate in classes that I teach is 2 to 3 students, and those usually fail because of the fact that they didn't get their assignments in for whatever reasons, and then I didn't know what was going on with you. I am not going to chase you down to try to figure out why. Tell me, communicate with me. Let's work this thing together, okay? All right. I'm here for you, and use me until you get the success that you need. And that's why I'm where I am today, because of situations like that. So extenuating circumstances. So is everybody clear? And this I'm going to ask now. Clear on the late assignment situation? Okay. All right. So yes, it's very, very, very important that you understand that. Absolutely important. And I think that most of you can attest that are in my classes before that I'm pretty liberal with that. Can I get some support from anybody that's been in my classes before? Yeah, I am. I am. I don't like failure, and I'm not an easygoing professor, but I'm a professor who believes in directing and supporting my students. I have a phrase called student success. That's my goal, and we'll achieve it if you listen to me and follow the routine. All right, so we're getting close to the time, but I haven't even done what I really need to do yet. So forgive me if I go a little longer, but it's too important for me not to make sure that you guys don't understand. So I've gone over the syllabus, I've gone over the calendar. Let me show you what the typical module will look like. Starting with the assignments. Okay, now, as you can see here, our assignment for this week is Casey Anthony and the media. And it tells you in here several important things that you must pay attention to. And it tells you that you can click on the link to find the material that you need to complete this assignment. And then you're going to follow what information we included here. If you notice, I said it earlier, save your assignment as a Microsoft Word document. And then you know how to use the Dropbox. If you don't know how to use the Dropbox, reach out right away to your peer leaders. Make sure you to your tutors who can help you. It is very simple, but most of the students get it. They get it right away. Okay. Now, this is what is expected. However, it's in the rubric because the rubric is important because it tells you how I'm going to grade. Tells you your due date. There it is right there. Then your rubric. Now, click on where it says view rubric and your rubric will pop up. And it tells you 80% of the grade has to do with this, what's in here. You should have seen that already because it's in the module itself. By the way, double space, please. That's part of the requirement. Double space, not single. And we already know the font and all of that. And then this will be different, but this is standard. And it tells you how many pages the minimum length is. 1 to 2 pages. By the way, 1 page is not 3/4 of a page. 1 page is not half of a page. 1 page is 1 page. Okay? So the minimum length requirement. So it's very, very, very important that you understand that. Not so much that we're really trying to get you to fill a page. We believe that in order to adequately address the issues that are included in the assignments, that it will take that amount. And so it's very, very, very important for you to understand and get that. All right. And then this is real standard in numbers. It's already things that I've already covered. 10% of your grade. APA will cause you to lose all 10 points. Okay. And so that's the standard that you're going to see. And when I grade you, I'm going to have comments under the section. If I tell you it's very good and so forth and so on, and then I check off the boxes after that, that means you satisfy the requirements of the rubric. Okay. Any questions about the rubric? Okay. Alrighty. Okay, so now we've gotten that done. So now let's go to your discussion post. We already, that tells you what you're going to do in order preparing for that. And you do that based on what I've already shared with you. And then your live classroom lecture, which by the way, it tells you again, if you click on that, when it is due. Okay. And that's the 12th. And that's how each week I will talk about the assignments for that. All right. So now let's go back and see if I normally, the content is what I would talk about in details. And my goal is to make sure that all these objectives are satisfied each week. There's your reading in here. There's a section on relationship between criminal investigations and the media. And then these are the things I've already talked to you about under there. And so you would take time to go over this. Okay. I'm not going to do that today. But I am going to talk about the course project, which you will have an assignment starting next week. Now, the purpose for the course project up front is for you to understand is to conduct 2 interviews. Now, one is of a news reporter. It could be TV. It could be written news reporter or radio reporter. Okay, or and you can communicate with these reporters through phone, through personal visits, and other things. Personal visits usually are not going to be the ideal scenario for now. And so you're going to deal with from a local radio station, newspaper, uh, radio station, TV station. So start thinking about that right now. Right now. All right. The second interview will be what we call a PIO, a public information officer. You know how almost every time something happens, the police department has a designated spokesperson. If something happens in the government, there's a designated person, sometimes the press secretary or whoever they put out that deals with. And since we're dealing here with criminal issues, the public information officer usually is someone in the law enforcement agency. And that's what I usually try to tell students, try to focus on. Or you could use a jail, or you could use a prison. So variety. So does everybody understand what I mean when I say a public information officer and the direction that you need to go in terms of getting this? Okay. So it's very important. So you're going to learn here in this class is that the media has a whole lot to do with how things are. And we already know that. Man, we blitz with it, okay? And then it says some questions to think about while working on this project is how does this happen? And then the project itself will give you some ideas and thoughts about how to do this. It is not an extensive report, and you will, when we get to the final project. Well, let's look at the timeline, because your final project is due in the 5th week. But notice the things, it's only 3. It's only 3. Interviewee selection. That's the interviewee selection for the PIO and the media person. Okay. So, and you'll see the details. We'll talk about that in detail next week. So don't worry about it. Or you can go and look at it and see, but we'll talk about that. Number 3, week 3, you create your interview questions. That's something you'll do yourself. All right. And then for week, you're going to conduct interviews. Now, you're not going to submit them, but you're going to begin a rough draft. So if you look at it, it's only really 3 written assignments. This is a short one, this is a little longer, and then this is the final paper that's due in week 5. Think of it in terms of operating that way. Is it clear? Anybody got any questions? Okay. Now, if at any time, because there are a lot of students that are not here, they're going to have questions. Already, if you listen to the lecture, I tell you how to get those questions resolved, and it's right there. And that's all I'm going to say about week 1 assignments and the project. So that's pretty much how we're going to operate every week, except we're not going to concentrate on those other things earlier. We're going to deal with the assignment, and then I'm going to lecture you, and then provide support and answers to any questions that you may have. All right. So now, before we adjourn, I'm a little behind, but bear with me while I go into this story. I'm going to do it faster than I've ever done it before. You guys will learn that I am a person who believes in professionalism. You're going to learn that I believe in students operating knowledgeable, and I repeat again what I said, professional. And I have a personal reason for that, because some bad things have happened to me in my life. It all started when I was a young kid. I was 7 years old and my dad was murdered in front of my face by a man who was a live-in boyfriend, it turned out, of my mother's. And he stabbed my dad in the forehead in front of my face. So if you can do the math, I said I'm 70 years old. So it was actually in 1957. And the guy didn't go to jail for killing my dad. I ended up living in the house with this guy. And he was openly sleeping with my mother after that. And then he used to beat her. So I grew up in a home of domestic violence. And so it was really, really brutal. I had, before my dad died, 5 sisters. I was the only boy and I was the oldest one, a 7-year-old kid. I have a photographic memory, so I'll always remember it. And so um, I learned about uh, the issue of Santa Claus because a man who was my mother's boyfriend, Webster Scott was his name. He actually tore the door off of a closet, and there were toys in there in that closet, and he took an axe and chopped them out in front of us kids and told us he was Santa Claus, and that's how I learned about Santa Claus. This is all dealing with domestic violence. By the way, um, I'm spending this summer, the next 6 weeks, working on the new domestic violence course, revising it. So I'm adding some material that if you ever take in the future, you might recognize my fingerprints on it. So it's a very serious offense. And so anyway, I lived through that. And in 1963, the man, after spending years of beating my mother and abusing her, he murdered her. My mom had 2 more girls by him, so I had 7 sisters at this time. And we were left without a mother or a father at my age of 13. And we had to live with an aunt who didn't want us there. She made us earn our keep there. We had to do a lot of things around the house while her kids were able to go to Y and do all kinds of things. So it was pretty tough. It was a struggle and a challenge. I found out my aunt was going to split us up, but then another aunt came and said that's not going to happen. So she took us all seven girls and me, and took us and had a house built, and we lived there. However, though, that wasn't the end of the bad situation because her husband turned out to be a person um, who tampered with my siblings. It was bad. Both of them would fight. They had guns, and guns were pulled out while us kids were in the house. So I went through all of this. When I was 14 years old, it was the year after my mother was killed, I found out that the guy, Webster Scott, was going to receive 10 years, guys. 10 years. 10 years in the law at that time meant 5. And then I'd further find out that for good behavior, he would serve 3.5 years. Well, that distressed me. And I ask questions when I get distressed. And someone finally told me, they said, well, these people called lawyers. And I went to the school librarian when I was about in I was heading to eighth grade, and she told me that they had a book on lawyers, and I took the book out, read it cover to cover. And the next day, anybody I met, and from that point on, I introduced myself as Richard Wright and says I'm going to be a lawyer. And that was my mission in life. But it was in adverse situations. It still continued as I was living with my aunt and an uncle that that he and I didn't get along. And this was long before I knew about what he was doing with my sisters, but we just didn't get along because I didn't want to take his name because I was the only male who could carry on my dad's name. Well, as it turned out, um, the church in the neighborhood where I was active in, because I used to stay out of the house as much as possible and come in at night and then go to school. So then finally came time the church offered to give me a 4-year paid scholarship to college, but my aunt and uncle would have to sign. He stopped her. At this time, I was about 18 years old, heading toward 19. I said, it's okay. I'm going to do it my way. And I left the house right after I graduated from high school. When I uh, left high school, some of my friends I met while at the church, they let me come and stay at their house. And I registered for classes at night at a junior college, studying what was then called pre-law. And then I got a job with the help of the people I was staying with, where I began to work at a big law firm. And I got a job in their mailroom. And while working in their mailroom, I met people. One of the names I will just share with you is a gentleman by the name of Ray Kroc. You may or may not know that name, but he was the chairman and founder of McDonald's. And Mr. Kroc took an interest in me. But I was a kid who used to come to work. The guys used to wear polo shirts. I used to wear a shirt and tie. Back in those days, white shirts were the only shirts, pretty much. But anyway, he took an interest in me. So in the law firm, in the mailroom, I would share with the lawyers that I was going to be a lawyer. And then as I was taking classes at night, I didn't have a bus. I didn't have a car. I was on the bus, the train, public transportation. I had to carry books in those days, by the way, because there was no digital stuff. And the books were pretty heavy, but I ended up doing it. So I went through my first year of college at night and Saturdays, where I'd have to be at work at 8:30 in the morning and get off of work at 4 and be in class at 4:30 to 10 o'clock, Monday through Thursday. And then I had Saturday classes. During those periods, I stayed on the dean's list. I worked hard. I decided after my first year in 1970, the young lady I had dated in high school, we decided to get married. And we got married. And I moved out of my friend's place and we got a little apartment where we didn't even have a bed. We had a mattress. We had boxes for a table. We had a little tiny TV that was black and white. And we were both in school. She's studying to be a teacher and I'm studying to be a lawyer. Well, in the meantime, one child comes along, 71, another child comes to 72, both girls. The law firm took me and moved me from a from a messenger to a file clerk in the law firm. And then they moved me from a file clerk to the law librarian. This happened doing over the years. And so I became the law librarian, but then I taught myself how to do legal research because we didn't have any of these systems that existed now. So I manually taught myself how to research, taught myself how to write a brief and memo. The lawyers found that out and they moved me into what's called a paralegal today, but it was called a law clerk. And I started going to court with the lawyers, going to business ventures with the lawyers. So I was on my way. In the meantime, I ended up leaving the junior college and going to a four-year institution called Roosevelt University. Started taking my classes at night and on Saturdays as well. Consistently staying on the dean's list and honor roll. But it was challenges. Money was tight, but it was important that I achieve success based on what I needed to learn. So I found myself to the point where it was time for me to graduate, near graduation from Roosevelt, where I was studying political science and minoring in business, specifically accounting, that I had to take the LSAT test to prepare for law school, and I did, and I didn't do too well. But I had to also decide what law schools that I was interested in. The rule of thumb was 3 law schools that you submit. I didn't submit but one. And people thought something was wrong. I said, no, I'm going to Northwestern University School of Law, and that's it. I wasn't arrogant. I was just sure that that's what I was going to do. And even with all the adverse situations, I was preparing myself for excellence. And so I found myself at a point where I submitted my application to Northwestern University School of Law early in 75, the end of 74. And the application is about 6 pages, but I sent them a package with writing samples and a little bit about my story that I just shared to you in more in detail. And it was in a big box. Well, the law school had said that they didn't have time for personal interviews and those things. However, I got a call from the law school inviting me to come over to sit down, and they wanted to see who was behind this package. So I did. I went, and I was interviewed by about 4 people for several hours, it seemed like, and they were asking me questions. And at the end of that, they stopped, they adjourned, they came back and said, we enjoyed talking to you. We learned a lot about you. We think you're a quality young man, that you're going to go places. But we don't use these opportunities to determine what students that we will have in the law school. They said, however, what we will tell you is this, is that we're going to be sending you some correspondence soon that you will probably be pleased with. Well, that was their informal way of saying to me that they liked me and that I would end up going to the law school. A couple weeks later, I got a letter congratulating me, and I have it in a scrapbook, to attend Northwest University and to be admitted for the class that started in 1975 in August and would go through to 1978. And everybody at the law firm was happy. I was happy. Well, one of the things that happened is that it was clear that I was graduating in 75, as well as my wife, and she was going to become a teacher. It was clear that I could not work in my first year of law school at Northwestern and that they didn't have any night classes. So it was a challenge. And I, began my classes. My wife began working as a teacher. But then they ended up with a teacher strike. And there went all the income that we had. Lights went out, all kinds of problems. We short on food. We sent the two girls to their grandmother's, which wasn't too far away, and we weathered the storm. We both studied. She was a teacher, but I was in law school, and I studied just like Abraham Lincoln did, by candlelight and flashlight. I ate cans of beans. It was a challenge, but we made it. I reached a point in law school where I decided that I thought I was going to have to take a leave of absence. I told one of my professors, and she said, meet me in my office before you do that. And I did. And she sat me down and held me hostage until I agreed that I was going to stick it out. And she's there right now. Her name is Joyce Hughes. And she is there right now as I'm talking about 2020. She's still teaching there from 1975. So when I graduated 3 years later, she was the first person that I hugged. While I was in law school, I met a gentleman who was a distinguished criminal defense lawyer, and he ended up lecturing on trial advocacy, and I was in his sessions. And his son was a classmate, and so few of us would go to his house, and we'd sit around, and he'd talk to us, about 6 of us. And then I shared with him my experience in life that I had gone through and the system. He decided he was going to help me get closure. He took me to the criminal court building and got records that I have even today about what exactly happened to my parents. He says, so what do you want to do with law? He says, you're working in this big corporate law firm. What do you want to do? I says, well, I want to be a criminal lawyer. He says, let me make a suggestion to you. He says, I know in the situation you're in, you might decide you want to be a prosecutor. I said, no, I haven't decided any of that. He says, well, good. He says, if you really want to learn it, be a defense lawyer. People, do you know what he was saying to me? He was saying, defend murderers, defend bad people. And I was always one who respected professionalism. So I took him up on it. And I said, okay, that's what I'm going to do. And this same gentleman introduced me years later to Johnny Cochran. Well, anyway, as I continued my track, graduated, got my law degree. Here comes a third child, a girl. And I ended up going back to the law firm where I started out in the mailroom as an attorney. By the way, I was the first African American attorney that they ever hired in the law firm. And I told them I was going to stay for a couple years, and I did. to 1980, and I decided I wanted to go out and do what I really wanted to do. They did a little what we call pro bono or free legal work in criminal cases, but they weren't really criminal lawyers. And so I ended up graduating from law school, going back to law firm, and then leaving 2 years later to start my own practice. After I worked with some lawyers, I didn't like their ethics, and I discovered Richard H. Wright and Associates, attorney at law. My law firm took off because I was doing radio. I had a show called Know Your Rights, and it was spelled not Rights, but Wrights. I had the phone number 974-4487 is my law office number, which is Wrights. And so I was on my way. There were a lot of challenges and issues that came about, but I was on my way. And so it reached the stage where my first wife and we went different directions. She graduated and was teaching, and I was practicing law, and we went separate directions. I helped raise my 3 girls. We're now 49, 48, and 41. And I found myself in a situation where I recognized that I could accomplish many, many things. I became a trial lawyer, and my jury verdicts of not guilty were in the high 90s. I connected with people very quickly because of my communication skills. But I'm going to tell you something, guys. I found myself, after I discovered what I wanted to learn about the law, and by the time I had reached 50 years old, I had, by the way, gone back to school after law school to go to seminary to work on my Master of Arts in Religion, and ministry interested me. And so I found myself um, in a pickle. But let me back up a little bit. After I got divorced from my first wife, and then I got married to a second wife, my second wife's mother became the village president in a tough town called Ford Heights in the south suburbs of Chicago. I became the village attorney. I said, but I wasn't taking the job unless I can carry a gun. So she said, you can't do that. You have to be a police officer. So I went to the police academy and trained and became a part-time police officer. So I became involved in investigations. I became involved in street stops. I never wore a uniform. And I had a badge and all of that. So I did this all still from 89 to 93. And so then my second wife and I had a daughter, was born in 90. It's another girl. And then she and I went in separate directions because the church that she was at and I found out that there were problems with her and me because her and the pastor were having an affair. Now, you know from what I learned early on in life what can happen to situations where there's affairs. That's how I lost my dad. So I immediately got out of that situation. I had decided I was winding down my law business and was pursuing a career in ministry. I met a young lady after that, and we started dating, and we became friends. And as of today, we've been married going on 26 years, and we both pastor a church. But here's what I'm going to tell you is that during that period, I learned that the challenges that you have should not stop you from moving forward. And so I decided to announce my retirement, close my office in about 96, 97, 98, totally completely closed it by nearly 2000. And I started concentrating on ministry. I started running various businesses. And then I found myself, um, my wife and I, we had a boy, and then we had a girl, and then we had a boy, and then we had another girl. All this between 1996, 95, and 2008. That's when I was born. And we went through some challenges as well because of the reduced monies. But I took various jobs, teaching special education, uh, running a janitorial company for a major chain of stores, service merchandise, doing closings for title companies. And then finally in 2011, someone came to me with this school I never heard of, Rasmussen College, and invited me to apply for a position as an adjunct professor, residentially, by the way, teaching business law. I got the job, and then I let the dean know quickly that I was a criminal justice person. And in 2012, they put me in criminal justice. And I began working that job as an adjunct professor, still doing closings to supplement my income. Then finally in 2014, an opening came for a full-time position, state program coordinator of the School of Justice Studies at the School of Illinois. And I took the job and got the job because I had been prepared through my career. I learned that nothing could stop me from achieving success but me. And so I began teaching young people since 2012 criminal justice and have now been 8 years there coming up. And I find myself continuing to effectuate change to continue to help students. And I had to learn how to operate online systems, which was hard for a person who never had anything like that. And I did. So now I'm very proficient at that. And so now I find myself here with you guys today, saying to you, I want you to do a good job. I want you to do well. I want you to perform. I want you to recognize and understand that there's going to be some challenges you have. But let me be here as a support to you. I know I went over my time, but I had to take time to share that with you so you'll understand how I am. Most of you guys in this class know this already about me. But I tell you the truth, you're going to discover that if you have me for any classes, that I'm going to be the same way. My students are my friends. My students sometimes don't agree with me. That's cool. But guess what? At the end of the day, my students all recognize that I have their best interest at hand. And you're going to learn that in this class within the next 6 weeks. And so with that, I wanted to end, and I want to give you a key phrase. And it's not the one that most of you already know. uh, it's not going to be that one at all because I have so many students in this class. And this week, I want the key phrase to be something that relates to important, something important that I want you to achieve. And that phrase will be, to get your points, student success. That's it. So I'm going to say good night to you guys. Thank you for coming out tonight. Get those assignments done. Reach out to me if you need me. My line is open. And that's all I need to say for tonight. So I'm going to say good night to you guys, and I will see you next week. Thanks for your, um, thank you. And peer leader, I'm going to look to you for some guidance and help throughout this quarter. I'm sure you'll appreciate being able to help your classmates, because that's what you do anyway. But I'm not going to have them to do it through the class. I want to have them to go through the process so that they can do it. Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. I feel really blessed to have this as we start out. I do want to say to you guys, stay safe, recognizing with the temperature and criminal justice in these days, it's just right for you guys to come in and effectuate change. And so let's just do it and let's get it done. All right. See you next week. Good night.